Is it job, like what are you doing and what should you call that role? And so I do think we're going to have a shift, but I do think there'll be all sorts of very large-scale displacement for all sorts of fields over time, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And a really interesting question, I think, is whether this translates to other areas of the economy, other kinds of knowledge work. And one thing that I've heard economists worry about, and even some people cite, is that you may have some junior developers or management consultants lose some of the skills that they would develop through practice. I think so. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because when I did diligence on a company called Harvey that I backed, which is I think really emerging as the main AI legal company.
Yeah.
And so they basically provide tools for law firms to be able to do various aspects of their work with different types of tooling more rapidly, et cetera. And so I called a lot of the CEOs of these law firms as part of this, and they work with many of the top 10 sort of law firms in the world. And I was surprised by what they were saying, because usually law firms don't adopt technology rapidly, right? They're usually a very slow adopter. And in this case, they're adopting Harvey incredibly rapidly. And I said, what is the thing that worries you the most about this technology? And they said, we think the number of associates we're going to have should shrink. Not the number of partners, but the number of associates. And so if we have 1/10 as many associates eventually, how do we think about career progression? How do we train them? What do they learn? What do they pick up over time? And so it's a shift in terms of how you actually think about your human capital that persists, and how do you train it, and how do you get it to the next level if the day-to-day job they normally would have done goes away? What does that mean?
I actually think that's the most interesting point on this, because we're talking a lot about coders and programmers, and what's interesting about that profession is a lot of those people don't go to college, they don't take out $200,000 of debt to get their job at Google. A lot of them are just very good at coding. But legal is actually, I think, the best example of this, where, as you said, if you only need 1/10 of the associates, but the universities aren't shrinking their class sizes to 1/10. You have a lot of people in America who were told that law is a profession where if you work very hard, you spend $200,000 to get your degree, you're going to have a job waiting for you at the end of that. And if those jobs aren't there, that actually is something where the credentialed class will rebel. And you do see AI affecting, I think we talk about it in terms of high skill work or low skill work, but I actually think it has a lot more to do with credential and the investment that people put into that credential, expecting that there will be a job and that there will be steadiness on the other end of that. And I think the people who are going to do the best and the jobs that are going to be created out of AI are actually ones that fluctuate in chaos. Like entrepreneurship is going to flourish because of AI. It is like AI is just going to help anyone who wants to become a small business owner or an entrepreneur in this country thrive, because the cost of the things that you need and the friction to start a business is going to zero. But if you're someone who wanted to go to law school, who has that debt and says, okay, I want to become a lawyer and I just want to go work at my local law firm, that job isn't there. And I do think that would be a mindset shift for the last 30, 40 years of how we think about what a high-skill job is and a credential job is coming out of the university system. My belief is that AI is going to disrupt the university system more than anything, because the way that we have translated education credentials is not going to be relevant in an AI ecosystem and an AI-enabled world.
I think that's a great point.